The global headlines are still trying to make sense of Xi Jinping's visit to the ASEAN region, Vietnam, Malaysia, and Cambodia. But as I mentioned to you in my last video, this is no ordinary diplomatic tour. It's something more significant, deeper, coordinated, and long-term. In this video, I shall walk you through 4 developments, why I think this is significant, and why ASEAN is central to it. While everyone was busy waiting for this visit to take place, something quiet was taking place in Beijing on 8th and 9th of April. It was a conference known as the Central Conference on the work related to the neighboring countries. This is a conference that was hosted by the Chinese Communist Party, attended by Xi Jinping himself. This conference basically set the tone for what is supposed to be the overarching strategy for this visit. President Xi's message: China would focus on building a community on a shared future. And President Xi essentially delivered the same message in his addresses in all these countries. In Vietnam, it was about a Vietnam-China community on a shared future. In Malaysia, it was Malaysia-China community on a shared future, and so on. So clearly, China is putting the framework to bring together a group of like-minded countries together with itself on what is its vision of a shared future. I'm not saying this as a bad thing, The terms used by President Xi, family, shared future, etc., is actually a softer and a much more appealing way of bringing countries together, as opposed to, say, for example, Malaysia's idea of an East Asian economic grouping that was proposed in 1991. It was very sharp, it was seen as very polarizing, and of course it was antagonistic to the other countries. But when we talk about family, shared values, shared future, we are talking about something much more softer, something deeper. And the shared future refers to common aspirations for peace, prosperity, development, safety, security, attachment to the multilateral trading system, open and fair trade, commitment to work together to build trade rather than to build protectionist walls. So it was a coordinated messaging from Beijing. We should expect this idea of a community with shared future to become a formal policy that China probably would advance within a broader framework. Was this a one-sided interest by China? Certainly not. In all 3 countries, President Xi was given very high protocol arrangements, very high security. In all the visits, dozens of agreements and MOUs were signed. In Malaysia, for example, 31 memorandums of understanding were signed. The second point is ASEAN's centrality in China's vision of a shared future. What do I mean by that? Well, Malaysia is currently the chair of ASEAN for 2025, but also do not forget, Malaysia is also the country coordinator for ASEAN-China dialogue relationship. And I think Xi Jinping's interest here is to seek the help of Malaysia to advance this idea. So one should not be overly surprised that perhaps ASEAN might issue statements, something like an ASEAN-China community based on shared future. Would that constitute ASEAN aligning itself with China? No, I don't think so. Remember, ASEAN is also trying to seek a special summit with the United States. So that would be an opportunity for ASEAN to demonstrate that it is treating both China and the United States as equal partners of equal importance to it. Third point, rallying ASEAN against the US tariffs and US protectionist economic policies. The United States was not singled out for mention in the statements or speeches, but the inferences were clear. China and the host countries were expressing the support for preserving the existing multilateral trading system for institutions such as the World Trade Organization, APEC, and others. So clearly, what they were basically expressing is that their commitment to keeping those trade system and norms and regulations in place rather than to succumb to protectionism and closing down of trade. The underlying message: support for an open, rules-based multilateral trading system. The fourth point: strengthening ASEAN-China trade investment through the Belt and Road Initiative. China's central idea is to use the Belt and Road Initiative to link all the countries of these three countries first and ASEAN together with China so that they could trade more efficiently, they could promote investments, develop infrastructure, preserve supply chains, create jobs and stability without being overly reliant on the United States. So essentially, it was about how China plans to insulate itself from the US pressures on its economy by embedding and integrating itself more closely in the major economies of Southeast Asia and eventually in the whole of Southeast Asia as well. And the plan that it has put forward is attractive for the member countries as well, because they themselves are also in the same situation as the China, but in a lesser form, also slapped with tariffs. So I think the plan and message that has been brought by China is something that is attractive and probably would gain traction. How about other issues? The South China Sea, for example. Yes, from the statements, these issues were also discussed, but since the visits of Xi Jinping were reclassified as state visits, generally discussions are not in detail. They'll be left to the officials to follow up. But let me make it clear, on the South China Sea, everyone is concerned. Everyone has agreed that this issue should be resolved peacefully without the recourse to violence and without the involvement of external parties. There were also discussions on other matters of concern as well: transnational crime, the scams, and things of that sort. In concluding, let me tell you that this was not an ordinary diplomatic visit. It was part of a grand strategy, a strategy to insulate itself from the US pressure, to isolate it from the global economy. And China's way of doing it is not by creating a hostile formation, but by getting the member countries of Southeast Asia to work together to preserve the existing global multilateral rules-based economic order. And China is counting on Malaysia to help pave the way by facilitating the discussions within the ASEAN framework. If you liked the video, hit the like button and share your comments.